In this video we're going to take a look at first aid and first respondedness, so stay tuned. So thank you guys for joining me here once again today. I want to start this video off by making an apology that this video is late. I filmed a video yesterday, edited and uploaded a video yesterday, and then decided that I wasn't going to release it. So I've had to come out and film a different video today. So we're going to focus today on talking about first aid and first respondenceness, and very particularly what I carry kind of on my person. We're not yet going to discuss my large first aid kit. We'll do that again in a future video. I know I keep saying that, it is going to happen, but I want to talk about this based on something that happened earlier this week, which I will get into in a little bit. As you can see, it's an absolutely glorious day. It is February the 13th. Yes, it's the middle of February, and it is this gorgeous. Spring is definitely a springing. There is snowdrops and daffodils starting to, well, the snowdrops are already in flower, and there's daffodils coming up as well. And I'm in fact in shorts. It is that nice. But let's save the ramble. Let's bring the camera a bit closer, and I'm going to run through what or we'll discuss stuff a little bit more in detail. So the main thing I want to talk about today is my new and improved pocket carry first aid kit, and I want to explain kind of why I've gone ahead and improved it. So if you've seen my bushcraft and outdoor EDC video, you'll know I was carrying a small about half this size, maybe 3/4, little red pouch from Brown's Bushcraft with some very basic first aid and other useful EDC items. But I found that I was never needing or never using the stuff that was in it, and that's not to say that I will use this, but I guess we could start with explaining kind of why I've decided to rejig it and kind of the principle behind this kit instead. So that old kit mostly had basic first aid things in it, like plasters and stuff, with the idea being the stuff that I actually might use every day. But it turned out I didn't. So the other day, earlier this week, I was out helping, or sort of running with another person, a litter pick, and an elderly woman in her 90s. Her feet gave way from underneath her as she was going up a hill, and she hit her head quite bad. We were second and third on scene. I was third on scene. First on scene was actually a ranger, so he dealt with the situation. But what ran through my head during and after the incident, which I'm obviously not going to go into too much detail of, and to be honest, we don't know anything more than what we saw on the day, but what ran through my head was, there is stuff that, obviously the ranger had his full first aid kit with him, but I will be honest, he was a little bit sloppy with his execution, and that's not to say that I could do better. I'm just saying that when he took his first aid kit out, it took him a minute to kind of find stuff and get stuff out. So there's a message in that to say, always be familiar with your first aid kit and where stuff is. Keep the important quick access, or the important quick required stuff quickly accessible. But what ran through my head was, had I had certain pieces of equipment with me, we could have kind of worked together better and would have been able to potentially better deal with the situation. Now, as far as I'm aware, the situation is okay. As I say, we've not been told anything, but and probably won't. But the ambulance crew got there, and they dealt with it from there. It wasn't overly serious in my somewhat professional opinion, or at least my educated opinion, that would be the word. So the purpose of this kit, because I know I'm rambling here a bit, the purpose of this kit is, rather than it being the stuff that I'm necessarily going to use a lot, because actually I found that I very rarely use stuff. Like, I've got cuts on hands and stuff, and I don't tend to put plasters and stuff on them. I just tend to live with it, and just keep an eye out for infection and stuff. So rather than it being a kit of stuff that I'm more likely to use, this is actually a kit that is more of a trauma based kit. It's a quick access, save a life kind of kit is the idea, whether that be my own, a colleague, a friend, or a random member of the public, as it might have, it might have helped earlier this week had the situation been worse or anything like that, or sorry, last week. So this kit is now living with me basically at all times. Like, if I'm leaving the house in anything where I can carry it in my pocket, it's in my pocket. This is by no means a comprehensive kit. This isn't meant to replace a full first aid kit. This isn't meant to replace anything like that. And obviously this is nothing without the training. I am first aid trained, but I'm not first aid qualified as of yet. But I'm fully first aid trained, so I know how to use everything in here, and that is always the message that I'm spreading when it comes to first aid, is don't carry stuff if one, you're not trained, and two, you're not comfortable to use it. If you're either of those things, don't carry it. Even if you're trained but uncomfortable and with how to use it, my recommendation is do more training. And if you're not trained, you shouldn't be comfortable with it if you're not trained. So this, I got a Life Systems, as you can see, a first aid kit, sports first aid kit at Christmas, and the bag that this is being kept in is the bag that was in that bag, with the purpose of keeping it waterproof, which I find interesting. This bag is IPX8 rated. It's waterproof to 10 meters, but I'm already starting to see wear and tear. But I'm not, and it's literally been a couple of days since I've set this up. By the looks of it, it's just wear and tear to this red panel on the back. Waterproof is really helpful. I live in a very damp climate. This is obviously bigger than my old kit, and this is just a first aid kit. But for what this is covering, there is a lot of stuff in here, and to be honest, I'm still able to carry it without it encumbering me or it being uncomfortable or anything like that. So I'm quite happy with it. Interestingly enough, the first aid kit that this came in, one of the things that it came with was a full box that was genuinely this size of ibuprofen tablets, still in the box, which I found quite interesting, and I can understand why they gave them in the box in terms of legal reasons, but don't carry a full box of tablets. And actually there is no medication in here. The reason, so if I'm going to carry something in a kit like this, it needs to be something that is going to work for anyone and anybody without them being able to say yes or no. So most countries now around the world, or developed countries, the US, the UK, stuff like that. The US can still be a bit hit and miss on this, though. But certainly here in the UK, you cannot be fined for doing first aid on an individual and causing more damage. You cannot. They cannot fine the government. You cannot get charged by the police for attempting to provide first aid and failing to do so. Even if that is a case of you did, it's not even like if you went to the level of what could be classed as malpractice. That doesn't exist. The same goes for CPR. But there is the thing in this country, however, that if you are found out to be first aid trained and were on a scene of an accident, or saw a scene of an accident and sorry, I'm getting that wrong. If you are on a scene of an accident, not if you see it, but if you're actually on a scene of an accident, whether that be a car crash or anything like that. So say there's a car crash in front of you and you've stopped literally on the scene. if you're found out to be first aid trained and opted to do nothing, you can get charged. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that is the case. So as I was saying, I'm not going to carry any piece of equipment in this or item that there is a risk of, well, to put it simply, the principle of this kit is it's very unlikely to be used on me, and even if it is, what I'm discussing here isn't going to affect that. But if I'm coming across a scene, a lot of first aid situations are dealt with where the patient is either unconscious or they're conscious but they're not aware enough to be able to give direct instructions. You look at that, or I can look at the example from last week. The casualty did become rather confused the longer the event went on, and that could have been shock, that could have been direct from the actual head injury, but we don't know. I don't know that. So that's the exact reason why I don't carry medication in here, because there is no medication on the market that is suitable for every single person that's like a painkiller. So I'm not just going to carry ibuprofen or paracetamol in here for the incident where someone has an allergic reaction to it or is already on those kind of medications, and giving more could lead to an overdose. And whilst, as I say, you cannot get legally charged for that, I don't want to make that risk anyway. So everything that's in here realistically is usable on anyone, and it is quite basic. So without further ado, let's get into what's in here. We're just going to work from front to back, and then I'll discuss a couple of items in some proper importance. So right at the front, first things first, I have cleaning wipes. Most of the kit that's in here came from that kit that I mentioned from Christmas, because it was spare, so a lot of it is Life Systems. So the first thing at the front is hygienic cleaning wipes. Now these form two main roles when it comes to first aid. First of all, cleaning your own hands. So even if you're going to put on a pair of gloves, which I'll come to in a minute, cleaning your hands first is a really good plan. But they can also, of course, be used for cleaning the patient as well. Hence that I've got 3 of them. So realistically, 1 for myself, that leaves 2 for me to clean the wound. Especially if it's a superficial wound, it's a very gentle wound. I can pull one of these and clean the blood off once the blood's stopped. Because there might be situations, I know I'm saying this is for trauma, and in most trauma situations, the casualty is going to end up in the care of a paramedic. But there is if there's a more gentle injury, I'm still going to be dealing with it, so these come in handy. These are alcohol free, which is really important. We don't want to be putting alcohol into, putting alcohol into wounds can be helpful, but they can also cause extra stings. Keeping it alcohol free, it makes it suitable for any injury. Next, we have a sterile adhesive dressing. This is an 8cm by 16cm. This is quite a big one. The role of that would be for a large but relatively gentle injury. So again, this is kind of something that's somewhat superficial for superficial injuries. So for example, maybe someone got a really long scrape gash but not overly deep, cut down their arm, place that on, stick it on, and we'll be good. Of course, you could also cut it round shapes for fingers and things like that. Generally, sticky things can be avoided because for a lot of it, especially trauma-wise, that's not suitable, but I carry 1 of them. Next, I have a packet of 5 non-woven swabs. So these are 5cm by 5cm. Basically, it's gauze. That's the simplest way to put it. it is gauze. But one thing to bear in mind, make sure everything that you have in a first aid kit is within date. So for example, all this life system stuff is saying the 6th of, it was manufactured in 2022, so can be used up until 2027, so that is fine. So basically, yeah, gauze, it's only a small amount of gauze, so I'm not going to be packing any ridiculously major wound with that, but for, especially for head trauma, put that over the top and then wrap a bandage around it and we'll be fine. Next, we've got a packet of fabric heavyweight plasters. Now, there's 9 in here. Of various sizes. Again, this is somewhat of a for superficial injuries, and again, I know I'm saying this is a trauma kit, but I could still end up using this for smaller things, and quite frankly, it's quite possible that if there's a trauma incident where I have managed to completely deal with the incident without the requirement for something such as a paramedic, it might be a case of, right, you've got a major or a somewhat major injury, maybe a head injury or something, we've stopped that, but you've also got cuts and scrapes and you're bleeding from bits of your fingers and stuff, so pulling out some plasters is always helpful. A pair of scissors, super useful for cutting plasters and stuff, and of course these are the ones that are at the at the safety angle for cutting fabric. Personally, obviously these are made in China, and these will probably last about one situation. I would like to upgrade to something such as the X shears or the trauma shears, you know, proper trauma shears, but I actually don't think they would fit in this kit. Next up is a simple bandage. This isn't even a branded one. I think this is just a big open bandage, long bandage, so this could be used to wrap a swab, you know, put a swab on an injury and then wrap it, but also in and of itself it could be used to pack a wound. Yep. Next up, I'm going to skip an item. So a pair of nitrile gloves in a sealed packet. Nitrile because we're not going to use latex in case people have latex injuries. These are sealed, so they're going to be relatively sterile. These have a slightly less lifespan. These have got 2024, so if I haven't used them, I'll need to. These are powder-free blue gloves in a size that will fit me, which is important. And finally, and this is, in my opinion, the most important thing that should be in any first aid kit and in other places of people's kits, a Mylar blanket. It's well known that hypothermia kills in trauma, and to again example off of the casualty that I was involved with last week, it was about 20 minutes to half an hour after the injury that we finally got one of these onto her. I didn't have one on me, and the ranger, it was the ranger who took about 20 minutes to finally get it out. Well, I believe it came out of the ranger's first aid kit. There was also another member of the public on scene. It might have came out of his car. Either way, it was about 20 minutes to half an hour by the time we actually got a Mylar blanket on it, and it was probably about 30-40 mile an hour winds that day. Yeah, maybe 30 mile an hour winds, and this elderly woman was sitting in the wind. So really, we should have got this on her, or one of these on her, straight away. So if there's anything that you're going to carry in your first aid kit, or quite frankly, if you're not wanting to carry a first aid kit on you all the time, put one of these in your pocket. Quite frankly, even if you get cold, there's an option. But I live in a very windy, wet environment here in Scotland, so keeping warm is essential, and should be one of the first things that you apply to the casualty. The only time personally that I would say this wouldn't be the first thing that I would apply would be massive hemorrhage from a femoral or arterial artery, because in that situation you're going to be wanting to stop bleeding because you're going to bleed out quicker than you're going to die from hypothermia. 4 minutes on average people will be dead by if there's a femoral or arterial artery injury. But second to that, hypothermia. Unless there is bleeding elsewhere, but especially on, for example, this casualty earlier this week or last week, because it was a head injury, there was no reason that the ranger, had I been more prepared, which I'm regretting now, but the casualty is fine, so it's not something to beat yourself up about, but it's something to learn from and try and improve. But whilst the ranger was dealing with the head injury, I could have been getting one of these out and getting it around her and keeping her warm, and that it wouldn't have necessarily made much of a difference in that situation, but at the end of the day it might have. And in that situation we didn't know what the outcome was going to be, right? So overall it's a simple kit, and while I'm talking I'm going to repack it. The gloves go in at the back, next to the mylar. That is because, so the way I look at it is the stuff at the front and the stuff at the back is the first things you're going to be getting out, and then the stuff in the middle is the stuff that you're going to need less quickly. So the gloves are right at the back because that means theoretically I can get them on quicker. All in all, and this is a recommendation by most first aid providers, don't be overly concerned when it comes to keeping gloves on, or not keeping gloves on, but having gloves on when dealing with a casualty. The reason they say that is because often, so our skin on our hands does an incredibly good job at protecting against bloodborne ailments like diseases, etc. And because of that, if you faff about putting gloves on, there's a chance that your casualty may get worse or may lose their life. So unless you have open cuts and sores on your hands, and even then it's sometimes worth the risk to just focus on saving the casualty. But if, for example, the casualty, I witness a casualty from 20 meters, 30 meters away even, up to however far away I can see it from, in the time I've gotten from where I am to the casualty, I could have those gloves on because they're right at the back. So open it up, hand in, gloves out, open the packet. In that scenario, I'm not caring about littering, I'm just getting the equipment and moving on. We can go and deal with the litter afterwards, but human life is always first. And again, the cleaning wipes are at the front because I might want to stare, even if I'm not going to go in with a pair of gloves, if I can sterilise my hands, at least that is something. But things in the middle like the scissors and the regular plasters, they're in the middle because I'm either not going to need them quickly, or therefore less emergency dealing and just kind of general day-to-day first aid. So there we go. So there we go. There is my updated pocket first aid kit and a little bit of the reasoning behind why I carry first aid everywhere I go. That's going to wrap this one up, guys. So if you learned something from this, let me know down below. But also have a think about whether implementing a first aid kit into your own life is something that you into your everyday carry or backpack carry or whatever is something you're interested in as well. That's it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing as well. Until next time, bye for now.